Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today I want to have a look at ZorinOS Lite, or Zorin 15, wow. ZorinOS 15 Lite just came out this week, a couple days ago, and so I've never actually looked at Lite. And so let's go ahead and just do a brief overview of Zorin as a whole. So they are billed as an alternative to Windows and Mac, designed to make your computer faster, more powerful, and privacy respecting. We'll get to that. And they do have the traditional version, which is based on GNOME, but if you didn't know that, you'd have a hard time figuring that out. They have done a really good job of theming some things. But they also have a couple of different options. They do have the Ultimate version, which is $40 US, and that will convert to your currency wherever you're at, which is going to include, now, this one here, it's one of these weird things. It's like the only thing you truly get in this is theming options and installation support. It says, extra applications and things like this. They're all available in the repo. Just install them, for crying out loud. So I think it is slightly disingenuous. But okay, the theming is definitely, if you want the ability to have like a Mac layout, various other layouts, it's definitely worth it in that respect. Some of the applications too that they have on the Ultimate can be harder to find, but I did probe around at several of the ones on the Ultimate list. They're all in the repos. You can install them if you want. They do have the Core Essential, which gives you LibreOffice, says here, compatible with Microsoft Office. I will note that you do have to make some changes to Microsoft Office to get this, or excuse me, some changes to LibreOffice to get the Microsoft Office compatibility. You do actually need to do that. And I have a video about that. Briefly, you need to set your document saves to docx files so that when you're sharing files, you're actually sharing docx files, because some versions of Microsoft Office do not like the open source formats. Like, they'll open, but they'll give you scary warnings because they want everybody to use their own proprietary formats, which I don't like, but hey, that's a reality. The second thing is you need to install the fonts, and I do not know if Microsoft fonts are installed on Zorin. If they are not, you have the same compatibility issues as you've always had. If they have installed the Microsoft fonts, then LibreOffice will be a little bit more compatible. That's what you need. Now, some of those are freely available, such as the old Microsoft TrueType fonts, but the newer ones, the Vista fonts, technically, there's some extra licensing that may or may not make them legal to be distributed with a Linux distribution. So my guess is the LibreOffice is not going to be quite as compatible as they want. Now, you can get the Core for free, and they do have, like I said, you do have the Core, and then you also have the Lite version as well. So this is the education version here. This is the Lite version. Now, your major difference is that your Core version is based on GNOME, and it is going to be a little bit more system heavy. The XFCE version is light, will run on much older systems, and it is a lot lighter in system requirements. Just having a look at their system requirements. This is the education we're going to be looking at. So this is the education, the Ultimate, and the Core. They want 1 gigahertz, 1 gig dual core processor, 2 gigs of RAM, 10 gigs of storage. On this one, you can see that the CPU requires a little bit less and the RAM requires a little bit less, just because the XFCE is a lot smaller. And actually, storage, they're asking for a little bit less, and a smaller resolution is possible as well. So with that, what we're going to do from here is we are going to dive on in, and then we will come back and make some comments at the end of the episode as well. All right, so here we are on Zorin Lite, and I have to say, the first time looking at this, this is the most amazingly themed XFCE you are ever going to find. I mean, XFCE has a reputation for looking old, and it does. This guy here it just looks amazing. This is XFCE, yes. You know what file manager it is, because this is actually Thunar. Wow, I am impressed. Out of the box, the guy looks very amazing. So it is a little bright. It is a little bit too bright for you. They do have options for theming your theming into different colors. They do have light options and dark options. And just as a brief overview of the system before we dive into that, we can right-click and set up your desktop settings. And with this, we should be able to find our desktop icons as well. We're going to come back to that in a minute, though. I do want to have a brief look at what other type of wallpapers we have. So some general wallpapers, a few hexagon type threads going with the ZorinOS theme. We're just going to go ahead and keep this wallpaper for now. We do have our software is the GNOME Software Center, probably my least favorite. And no, it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that it's GNOME. It just has to do with the fact that oftentimes I find that applications are not in here that are available if you are installing via a just a terminal apt command. There's applications that are not in here. It's a regular fight. I think the organization is not quite as easy to use, and it seems to be a little bit slower of a software installer, but it does its functional task. As far as other items here, basic accessories. Now, I don't like how this menu, I can't change the size of this menu, and this is like if you remember when Microsoft first changed the menu from, I think it was from XP to Vista, was it, I think? Where now the menu got so cramped and there wasn't anything you can do with it. It's like, I can't adjust this, and it's like, it drives me crazy. But you see that we do have a variety of system tools. We don't have things like USB writers and things, but CD burners, terminal stuff, screenshots, archive managers, calculators, things like that. So we have enough of those items there. We have just some basic games pre-installed. Out of our graphics, we have GIMP, we have LibreDraw, Simple Scan, image viewers. Internet, we have Firefox, Thunderbird, and I'm not sure what Ramina is. You guys can let me know. Multimedia, we have Cheese, Parole Media Player. Is the police going to come check on this guy? He's on parole. Anyway, TV, Pulse Audio, and XF Burn. Is that two burners? Is that the same burner we had up here? Yeah, just one. Same burner, just listed in both places. That's all right. I installed HomeBank and I installed View Your Mind. These are two of the software applications that they're like, hey, these are included in Ultimate. Yeah, they're included here too. You just have to install them. We do have the full LibreOffice suite, including your databasing, things like that. Since we talked about this earlier, let's go ahead and have a look at are those Microsoft fonts installed? Because if you want LibreOffice to be fully compatible, or at least most compatible with Microsoft Office, then we have to use the fonts that Microsoft Office uses, and we have to have our save defaults. So let's have a look. So one of those would be the Arial font, which is not installed, and of course, Calibri font, which is the one I'm pretty sure you could not get installed on a distribution. There's ways to install it. So, of course, none of those are installed. So, yeah, none of the Microsoft fonts are installed. And that's your biggest compatibility issue. If you're using LibreOffice, sending a document to somebody else, the biggest issue is the fonts. And the fonts on Linux and the fonts on Windows are different. And you have to have some overlapping in fonts. Then, of course, the other thing is make sure that when you're saving the document, make sure you're saving it in the docx format down here, not the ODT format that you might want to use for open source. I do ODT because I don't do a lot of sharing, but if you are sharing with Microsoft Office users, you want the fonts and you want to go with docx. So if they wanted to make this really more compatible, then for sure do that. Now, of course, the other thing we are probably seeing right now is everything is white. I'm going blind. That is one of the criticisms. That was one of the things that I told ZorinOS when he was first getting started with his distribution, is it's so white, and Farron went through and darkened things up. They could probably do that. So we do have two options in the theming. We have extraordinarily black, and we have extraordinarily center of the sun bright white. So we'll get to that in a bit. We're going to dive in and have a look at those. So this is just your basic settings panel. Everything in the settings panel you can also get by pulling up your settings right here. We'll leave that open because we're going to get to that in a minute. And then over here we have our task manager and just some basic tools here. So let's see what we're using. So we're using 14% of our memory, and that would correspond. We're using about 6 gigs here, so whatever that corresponds to. So it's actually pretty light on system resources, so that's good. All right. Now, there's a few little quirky things in here that I found that are worthy of consideration. Since this is XFCE, we of course have the XFCE appearance. And Zorin, though, if you take a look at their website, they're going to show you this settings panel. I looked at this going, where's that settings panel they showed us? Well, it's somewhere else. In here, of course, this is just your basic XFCE styling panel, your icons, things like this, right? But if you actually want Zorin's appearances, you have to go in here. But there's something else I want to look at first. Looking at our desktop, this is the one we looked at earlier, where you get to when you right-click on the desktop. Come on over here, excuse me, into menus, and then you have your icons. And you have down here the option to put a variety of icons on your desktop. So if I want to put trash, file system, home, all these different icons on here. Let's see if I can make this thing bigger or not. All right. So you can see we have a few different options for icons here. We have removable drives, including network shares, disk drives, things like that. All right, so let's go back into the all settings and go into the Zorin appearances. So the Zorin appearances is where you can do this is more of your standard Windows 10 type feel. This one here is your more older Windows type feel. Both having the same menu that I can't adjust the size of, but we do have the options which way you want to go. Inside of there, we can turn icons on or off. But notice here that we only have global mounted volumes, trash, and home. We don't have the file system, so we're actually missing some of our desktop icons here that you find in some of the other places. You can move your title bars left or right, whatever your preference is. Inside of your themes, this is that nice theming panel that they have where you can simply choose your highlight color here, which is very nice. So we have a variety of different highlight colors, and then you can choose bright as the center of the sun or everything turned black. There's really nothing in between, and that's kind of for me some issues. Now we have this guy in the middle. This guy here is based upon your approximate time zone. Is going to say it's going to be the bright as the center of the sun during the day, and it's going to be black as night during your nighttime. So you do have the option, but at least on this one, it does not actually give you the requesting information for location data like I talked about in the other video. And then here's your basic fonts. So Zorin does have its own Zorin appearance that is different from the XFCE appearance. It'd be nice if they mapped this desktop set or the desktop settings and things, theming settings into the Zorin appearance. But I kind of understand why they didn't. That would have been some things are in there and some things are not. So that is kind of what we have. So overall, the thing looks nice. It is a little bit too bright. They really don't have a lot of settings. Inside of here where we had our different settings, this is where we have all of these. You can manually choose from them. We do have a Zorin 95, which is kind of resembles the old 95 type theming look. We have a few other ones in here. This is actually kind of in between. This one might be the one you want to go to if you're not going center of the sun, but let's just go ahead and look at that. So that's kind of what we get inside of Zorin. Here's your icon packs. I'm not sure what the exclamations are. Icon file has no cache. Okay, it's just they're not cached. No big deal. All right, don't care. And that is kind of inside of our settings panel. So overall with ZorinOS, the theming is very nice for XFCE, but we really don't have a good middle ground. It is a little bit bright to look at. So if I, let's pull this back open, we can see with the theming that I have with the gray, this is at least a little brighter, but man, it's hard to look at. It's excessively bright or excessively dark. There's really not a lot of middle ground in the middle there. Now, there is one more thing that I want to talk about, and that is the Zorin data collection. Now, I did a whole video on Zorin's data collection because I raised some concerns in the ZorinOS when they first released I think it was the Core 15, I did a video of it, and then I talked about some of the data collection and some of the things that I had a concern with, and they emailed back, and I did do another video explaining all of that. So I'm going to link that video explaining it. All the stuff that applied to the older one applied to the new one, but it's worth reiterating here. Number one, they are collecting data on the systems. It's a minimal amount of data, but they're collecting it. And during the install, there is no indication that they would do this. You would have to dig deep into terms of services that they never give you the terms of services to prompt to click through. Now, what are they collecting? Every hour that the computer is on, they are collecting the fact that it's running Zorin. They're collecting the number of users. So it's basically a Zorin census, counting the number of active Zorin users there are. Now, I was thinking about it today, and there is a extra level of concern that I have in that I had not addressed before, and that is that this thing is probing every hour, and that means that they can guess within an hour how often a Zorin computer is on or off. Now, they do say that as soon as the information comes in, the IP tables are dropped. But the fact that IP tables are transmitted over to a server means that somebody could maliciously get into their server and harvest those before they're dropped. It's beyond the scope. And the fact that when you install it, there's no indication of this data collection. There is no terms of service I have to agree with. There's no EULA for using the platform. They are collecting this data almost always without your knowledge. And that is, for me, the reason why it's out. Even if it's simply, hey, counting the number of Zorin machines that are turned on right now, that in and of itself, to me, is still a problematic thing. Okay, and we have to push back against this. And it seems like a little pesky little thing, but we have to push back every time an OS wants to collect anything from us. We have to push back. So that is primarily the thing keeping Zorin off of my recommended lists right now, is the fact that they are collecting data. They do not tell you they're collecting data. There's nothing in the computer that says it. There's nothing in the installation process that says it. And there's really, you'd have to dig very far deep inside of the terms of service in order to find it. Now, if you do dig, you can find the information. The basic thing is this: there is a cron job running on the service every 1 hour, and that cron job is going to run an application called ZorinOS Census. So if you uninstall ZorinOS Census, it will stop doing that. And then, of course, I'd recommend, if you know how, go into that cron job, and also you want to delete that cron job as well. But what that's going to do is every hour the computer's on, it's going to count the number of users, and it's going to ping back that a Zorin computer is on with this many users. And then they've said the IP table is dropped. I've not seen any evidence to suggest that that's not happening. But the fact that that type of collection is on the system is what prevents me from recommending this to a new user, carte blanche. It has a lot of great things going for it, but you can have this amazing plate of food sprinkling with a little bit of arsenic of data collection, and I don't want to touch any of it. That's my thoughts. So those are my thoughts on Zorin. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.